What is up, fantasy football people? Bark, Back Row Fantasy Show coming at you. Let's get straight to the point. What have we learned through the first quarter of the season? I personally think it is a massively huge lesson. That lesson is quit going zero running back. I don't think zero running back is a winning strategy in fantasy football. I just don't. And let me tell you why. Let's go through the unexpecteds. So I've got a list of unexpected top 40 players. But first, let's start with quarterback. Quarterback is the usual names. Drake May and Caleb Williams are in the top 10. Other than that, it's every name we expected to be in the top 10. And a lot of us did expect Drake May and Caleb Williams to be in the top 10. We just did. Drake May is a fantasy darling over at Fantasy Pros. I agree with them. Caleb Williams, not quite as much on most shows, but I think it's clear he's good. He's good, and he's only going to get better. They just needed that team to grow around him. But again, let's not focus too heavily on quarterbacks. Like we draft the quarterbacks where we know to draft the quarterbacks, and that is that. Tight ends. Tight ends are a hot mess, and they have been pretty much for all of existence. Travis Kelce was an exception to the rule for a while. Who else? We had George Kittle has been an exception to the rule. Then we see Brock Bowers come into a team with literally no quarterback and no weapons, and shoddy quarterbacks threw underneath to Brock Bowers all day long. He's barely top 10 now, and a lot of people spent first-round picks on him. I'm just going to say right now, don't do it ever again. Don't spend a first-round pick on a tight end. Dynasty, redraft, whole 9 yards. Don't do it. Just don't. I have 0 Brock Bowers shares, and I'm thrilled about it. Is he a great tight end? I think so. Is somebody you should draft with your first-round pick? No. No. Don't do it. Don't fall for it. Too many shows. Hype tight ends. Now, I like the 0 running back strategy if you're going to take shots at running backs with potential, which I've talked about on this show before. And that is if you're grabbing surefire wide receivers, which, there's not as many as you'd think they are. And the ones you think are going to dominate year in, year out, it's not so. Ja'Marr Chase, super talented, but without Joe Burrow, and for the first game of the season for that matter, it just doesn't matter. The team doesn't have an offensive line to give anybody time to find Ja'Marr Chase. And I think we need to really start focusing more on teams that don't have good offensive lines, and the quarterback won't have time to throw, and Chase Brown won't have time to run or find a hole to run through. Come on. I mean, offensive and defensive line, it's been said a million times by a million different people. If your team doesn't have great players in the trenches, everyone else is going to fail to be great. And that goes all the way to IDP and Dynasty with linebackers. If you don't have a good defensive line, those linebackers, maybe they do rack up tackles, but just the trenches are where the numbers are made from. Chase Brown, fantasy darling, doing jack shit. Jack shit. Which is confusing because Saquon Barkley isn't lighting the world on fire and his offensive line is pretty good. But just think about things. Think about things just a little bit. Ja'Marr Chase, probably going to be okay. I'm not saying like we wasted, a pick on Ja'Marr Chase, but look around the league and just slow down. Slow down your roll. Year in, year out, sometimes players dominate, sometimes they don't. But I'll tell you who is dominating in fantasy football, and it's the running backs that we expected to dominate. It's the best of the best that we're going 0 running back on and passing over them for wide receivers. And now we have this. Unexpected running backs in the top 40. This is just my opinion. You may have some unexpecteds that are producing, but for me, there's 2 in the top 40 that I would not have projected to be in the top 40 in fantasy points this season. Kenneth Gainwell's one of those. Never would have thought that. Everybody had Caleb Johnson. I had Jaylen Warren. Kenneth Gainwell's the guy that's been doing it. Now, Jaylen Warren been a bit nicked up, this, that, and the other, and Caleb is fumbling. But if you'd have told me Kenneth Gainwell is somebody I need to target in fantasy football, I'd have been like, why? Second guy, Woody Marks. It's the rookies you don't expect. Nobody expected Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt to be a guy that was going to be drafted even in redrafts and dynasty, even in rookie drafts. A lot of people weren't drafting Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt. Granted, I'm talking unexpected running backs in the top 40. Ja'Cory is expected because going into the season, I think we expected, him to actually do something. So he would be on this list, but I feel like he was a little more expected. Woody Marks, not so much. That's 2. If you passed over running back after running back to go with like 0 running back, which means drafting guys that are unexpected and you hope to get something out of them, Kenneth Gainwell, Woody Marks. If you drafted Gainwell, Marks in your 0 running back strategy, congratulations, but I don't think anybody fucking did. I don't think anybody fucking did that. And if they did, kudos to you. Now, you probably got lucky and did that. You probably had Jaylen Warren, Caleb Johnson on your taxi, and you picked up Kenneth Gainwell if you're a backup believer like I am. Good for you. Woody Marks, you may have picked him up when Joe Mixon went down, but everybody else was Nick Chubb or Dameon Pierce. And maybe you drafted Woody Marks with your 4th or 5th round rookie pick. Maybe. But that's unexpected top 40 running backs. 2! If you didn't draft Jonathan Taylor, you're probably not undefeated in your league. If you didn't draft, who else? Christian McCaffrey, you're probably not undefeated. If you didn't draft James Cook, Bijan, Gibbs, Bucky, Jacobs, even Genty, you probably don't have a winning record. Now here come the names at wide receiver who were unexpected. And some of these names you might hear and be like, oh, I expected that. And they're names, so maybe you did. But as far as like top 40 guys, and these first 2 names, as far as top 10 guys go, who expected top 10 from Quentin Johnson and Emeka Egbuka? Emeka Egbuka over time, sure, but not top 10 out of the gate. So Quentin Johnson and Egbuka, if you'd have drafted top running backs and then took Egbuka in round 8 and Quentin Johnson in round 15, you're probably burning up the world right now. Keenan Allen, free agent going into the season. If you would have just held on to him like you would a backup running back and be like, well, Keenan Allen can play. I know that. If somebody signs him, I've got a guy that maybe he's a bye week guy. No, he's a starter. He's a starter. Trey Tucker, inconsistent, don't love it, but he is top 40 and gave you a sure win if you had him in your lineup week 3. Hollywood Brown, Tyquan Thornton, top 40 guys. Did you expect that? Probably not. Romeo Doubs, top 40. Do you expect that? Probably not. High on the top 40. Troy Franklin. No, you didn't expect it. Kendrick Bourne. Nope, you didn't. Alec Manor could be your 3rd wide receiver right now. If you'd have taken really good running backs and then sprinkled in some of these wide receivers, you're probably undefeated or maybe 1 loss. That's crazy. The point I'm trying to make here is you're going to have a better bet finding 10-point-plus wide receivers than you are running backs. So if you passed on them, you're probably having a hard time this season. I'm guilty in one league. In one league, I decided to go 0 running back, and I drafted backups. I drafted Cam Skattebo. I drafted Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt. It hasn't worked out yet. I'm 1-3. But we'll see if it works out. But so far, I wish I'd have held on to some of my running backs I had last year. I traded Devon Achane. I traded Kyron Williams. My wide receivers sucked. But maybe the strategy should have been to grab wide receivers with potential instead of running backs with potential, because if I'd have kept those running backs, now I've got Alec Manor. Now I've got, well, that's about it. I traded for Marvin Harrison and T. Higgins. That's not going well for me. So part of this is a bit of a contradiction. But I probably would still, I'd be 2-2 if I'd have kept my running backs, I bet. And then maybe I would have been focused if I had the running backs. I wouldn't have been focused on finding gym running backs. I'd have been focused on Keenan Allen off the waiver wire. I would have been focused on drafting Egbuka instead of Cam Scatterboo, which should toss up right now. I would have been more focused on just loading the table at wide receiver with potential as opposed to running back, because running back potential is not doing anything right now. Not for me. Wide receiver potential would probably be doing better for me. Right now, I wish I had Quentin Johnson and Egbuka and would have traded Marvin Harrison and T. Higgins to get him. Will that change throughout the season? Maybe. We'll see. T. Higgins, I think, is a talent. I think the Bengals are going to have to get – they should trade for Jameis Winston. At least if they care about fantasy owners, which they probably don't. Jameis isn't really going to get them wins, but, I mean, he'll pull the trigger quicker than Jake Browning will, and one of those guys will probably come down with it more often than they are now. So we'll see. There's some trades yet to happen or pickups yet to happen, or maybe Jake Browning gets it figured out. He was good a while back, but their offensive line just sucks. Yeah, I'm focused on the Bengals a little bit. They're killing everyone's hopes and fantasy dreams, so I'm a little bit focused on them. But moral of the story, we have learned that zero running back is not a winning recipe, not in my opinion. Every time we think running backs are over, they're back. They're back. Jonathan Taylor absolutely smashing it. Christian McCaffrey smashing it. I wish I'd have traded for McCaffrey and just drafted his backup just in case. We just didn't know who his backup was. Turns out it's Brian Robinson. The other two guys don't sniff the field. Man, finding out some stuff this fantasy football season. Another lesson to be learned, I think, is just be patient. I hope to God most of you did not trade Ashton Jeanty or O'Marion Hampton after 2 or 3 games. These are rookies after all. You have to be patient with some rookies. Some jump out of the gate. Some don't. Running backs, you got to get carries. The team's got to learn to trust you enough to give you more than 11 carries or more than 12 carries or more than 13. If you're going to be a first-round fantasy bell cow back, you have to earn 20. You have to earn 20 carries and earn those third down snaps. Jeanty and Hampton seem to have officially earned those snaps, which means they're killing it for you right now. Another thing I think we can learn from the first quarter of the season, take advantage of people with new scenery. Sean Connery, Javonte Williams. Change of scenery from the Broncos to the Cowboys, paying huge dividends. And he was cheap, so take the chance on the new scenery. George Pickens, too. I mean, yeah, CeeDee Lamb's out, but George Pickens, getting it done. Big time. Deebo Samuel, renewed life in Washington. Getting it done. Big time. I got him for very cheap before the season. Already traded him in a deal that netted me Jackson Dart because I needed a quarterback, but he's getting it done. Devontae Adams, older, but on a great Rams team with a great quarterback. Guess who's getting it done? Devonta. DK Metcalf. Who else? Stephon Diggs. I mean, Diggs is good enough to be your wide receiver 3 or 4 with those numbers. Getting it done. Don't discount the scenery change. That's all I got. I just wanted to come and bitch at everybody, including myself, because I have fucked some of this up for sure. I am not doing great. I am 1-3 in 2 leagues and 3-1 in another. I have hope. I'm not like rushing out and making game-changing moves right now because 1-3, not a big deal. I could reel off. Some people will just win every game out from here. It happens. Sometimes you catch fire and things go well. A lot of players start out of the gate slow. And then over the second half of the season, things change. And then some people start fast and they fade a little bit. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on your waiver wire. Make a trade for a top running back if you can. Now's the time. Even if that means you're dealing a top wide receiver to get one, make that deal. Now I'm going to hang on to Cam Scatterboo and hope that one of my like Isaiah Davis or can't even remember the guy's name from Minnesota that's been catching passes in the backup running back role. Starts with a Z. Something Xavier. hoping that or Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt earns more carries because per carry, he's the best running back on the Commanders pretty much by far. Rodriguez will reel one off, but then, stopped. Ja'Cory's the guy. The sooner they give him more carries, the better. And that'd be great for my fantasy teams because I got him everywhere. So we'll see. But don't lose the faith. Hold on. Don't blow your team up after 4 weeks either, just because you didn't, unless you can get one of those running backs. Because they're harder to get now. You're not going to get them cheap anymore. So if you got to pay the fair price or a little bit more than market to get them right now, fucking do it. And worry about the rest later. It's just fantasy football after all. And if you're going nowhere currently and you got the wide receivers to get a deal done for a running back, do it. And then go try to acquire some of these guys that are putting up wide receiver 3 numbers. Fucking grab 3 of them if you have to. Get 3 wide receiver 3s and 2 running back 1s. Recipe for success. Trade Brock Bowers right now if you can get a running back. Fuck it. Fuck it. Goodbye, Brock. Have a good one. I'm out of here. Goodbye, everybody. I'll see you next time on the Back Row Fantasy Show. Thanks for joining me.